I want to make one thing clear. I don't think Sephiroth is getting a redemption arc. Not in the least. What's up, everybody? I'm Joshua Thomas, and we are once again talking about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and I have seen a lot of buzz about Sephiroth being the protagonist, according to an interview that was translated by Aitai Kimoji or Audrey. The interview, I'll just read the paragraph that is important to this topic that we're talking about. As far as Sephiroth being this extremely popular character, frankly, I'm very curious as to what makes him so attractive to users, because I hear this opinion very often. His appearance firstly, I'm sure, but also perhaps there is something about his background that brings about a particular appeal to so many of the players that makes him this iconic character. And so, for Rebirth, I would think that besides Cloud, Sephiroth is also a protagonist that we can think of for this title. That is Tetsuya Nomura, the creative director of Final Fantasy VII. So, why would he say that Sephiroth is a protagonist? And why are these other channels or people talking about this also saying, well, yeah, Sephiroth can technically be considered a protagonist according to the definition of protagonist? I think people are using the overly simplified definition of what a protagonist is. When it comes to story writing and storytelling, from a book to a movie to a video game, the protagonist isn't just like every main character. The protagonist has more than just one sentence worth of things that make them the protagonist. And I'm going to use the website liberalarts.oregonstate.edu as of all the websites I checked, I think theirs is quite possibly the most succinct but also the most accurate. I'd found another one, and when I was doing research, and of course I didn't save it and don't even know which one I went to, but according to this, and I highly agree with this, the protagonist is the character who drives the action, the character whose fate matters most. In other words, they are involved in and often central to the plot or conflict of the story, but are also usually the emotional heart of the narrative. This definition also states that, very shortly, that the protagonist is the main character. Not the main characters, but the main character. They also go on to say that the protagonist changes. They usually make choices, take actions, and are altered by the repercussions. So, yeah, that is the main character, and in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, the main character is Cloud Strife. Now, of course, this is over the course of the entire game of FF7 Rebirth and of Remake as well. Cloud is the main character, but once again, we go back to why would he state that Sephiroth is also a protagonist? In the simple sense, once again, a protagonist is a main character, but from what we just read, Cloud Strife is the central character of Final Fantasy VII, the OG, and of course this remake trilogy that we have here. And while yes, there are other characters who are also extremely important to the plot, these are secondary characters, and we're not going to use any of those extra whatchamadoodle-tagonists words. We're just going to stick with protagonist here. All the other characters are secondary characters who have secondary character arcs. They are allowed to have their moment in the sun in which they, for a short amount of time, take the lead in the story, have an arc, have a main villain, have some kind of conflict that they have to overcome, and grow a little bit for it. But from beginning to end, Cloud Strife is the main character. So, what about Sephiroth? Maybe Audrey just had a little bit of lost in translation here, but if he really did say that Sephiroth was a protagonist, we could sort of look at this as him being a protagonist in the eyes of the fans, not necessarily in the actual game itself. If anything, Sephiroth is the villain, or perhaps even the antagonist. It remains to be seen until I've actually had a chance to play the game, whether I would consider him to be the villain or the antagonist, or both. It's also important to note that perhaps we're talking about Sephiroth in the fact that Sephiroth has enough of a backstory that yes, he is a victim, he does go through many changes, and he has his own villains that he has to deal with in his life. The Shinra Electric Power Company being one of those, big villains that he and Cloud both share alike. But we also have the flashback at Calm, where Sephiroth starts off as a good guy, and we see his downfall. We see him go from being the hero to the villain. And if we look at him as the protagonist just in this part of the storyline, then we are looking at a tragedy. It ends in the death of a hero and the birth of a villain. Of course, the flashback that we have at Calm that takes place, in Nibelheim is pretty much a tragedy for everyone involved, but even looking at protagonist Sephiroth, it's also a tragedy for him as well. So let me know what you guys think. Once again, I don't think that this means that Sephiroth is going to get a redemption arc for many, many reasons. The most meta being that, according to lore, in order for Sephiroth to survive in the live stream, he had to shed the memories that really made him a decent person. He was able to hold on to basically his emotions that made him want to destroy, want to kill, and basically not care about those around him, while shedding the memories of his friends and his loved ones, and what we could consider to be parts of our memories that make us human. So the Sephiroth that we see in Remake and Rebirth is, of course, that Sephiroth who has shed portions of his humanity in order to be able to arise from the live stream. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know if I got anything wrong there. I know there are going to be some people in the comments talking about how I might be overstating the term protagonist, but let's just face it, if you boil it down to one sentence, that's an understatement. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you will check out more Final Fantasy VII content on the FailroadExpress, including this one that explains what exactly, the antagonist was of Remake. So I'll check you guys next time.